Anyways, I digress. So everybody, thanks for listening to this podcast. Please like, subscribe, and definitely share this video. We have an American treasure on today, so definitely check her out and learn more about her if you don't already. This is former Congresswoman Pat Schroeder. She was the first woman representative from Colorado from 1973 to 1997. So she's been in Congress for a long time. And throughout this interview, we're going to talk about what happened in the 2020 election, what happened in the insurrection on our Capitol, because she has that firsthand knowledge of the building and working in Congress in general, and also what she thinks of the up-and-coming Biden administration. So, Congresswoman, thanks so much for taking time out of your day, rather, today to come on and speak with us.
Thank you. It's a joy.
All right. So let's talk about this. We saw what we thought before the election of 2020 was going to be a blue wave. We saw these big, huge leads by Joe Biden in the polls. We thought that those polls would carry a lot of the Democrats down ticket, whether they were House, Senate, State House people in general. But a lot of those people, men and women, did not win those races. So what do you think happened in the 2020 election cycle?
Well, I think a lot of people who are Republicans decided to give up on Trump, but they couldn't give up on the rest of the people, And I think some of the independents thought, well, okay, we don't like Trump, but we don't know that we want to, give this whole wave. And I think some of the far left, no one's ever good enough for them. And so they never vote. When you look at Georgia and how well they got out and said to people, no. I mean, you got two options. It's a binary choice, please. And people did show up and it made a big difference. But it drives me crazy. I just don't understand why people don't get it's a binary choice and that, all these other distractions, just take away and give us somebody like Donald Trump.
Right. Well, briefly before we came on the air, we discussed what happened in Florida. We both live in this state, somewhat around the same area of the state. And we saw in 2020 that in Florida, there was two women congresswomen in South Florida that did lose in Miami-Dade County. We also saw 3 state house seats in the state of Florida lost, and also a state Senate seat also in Miami-Dade County lost. A senator lost. My thing is, are you worried as a person that was in politics, you know the game extremely well, that in 2022, when Florida has a governor's race, and we have a disaster for a governor right now, I call him Ron DeSantis because he's killing everybody in sight in the state. And we also have Marco Rubio up for Senate. 2 places where the Democrats could score big wins, especially in the DeSantis race. What are you worried about that because of what we saw in Florida in 2020 with all those losses?
I'm terribly worried. And secondly, it's going to be a nanosecond before we're at, 2022. And so we've really got to get some good candidates out there going. I'll tell you, though, I'm not as concerned about South Florida as many people were. One of the congresswomen who lost, I begged her not to run. I thought she was too old. She'd had a stroke.
Yeah.
And she didn't really fit the district. She was of Lebanese descent and it was a Hispanic district. And, you put all those 3 things together and it's like, come on. And the second thing is interestingly enough, the percentage of the Hispanic vote that Trump got was exactly the same percentage that he got the last time. The only difference was the number of Hispanics voting went way up. And it went way up because they put money out there and built little community gathering places where you could have coffee and talk about all of this. The Koch brothers, I guess, or somebody like that founded it all. And it got the registration up. In other words, they kind of did what Stacey Abrams did in Georgia, only they did it down there with the Hispanic community and got that voting turnout up. So what we need is candidates that fit the district, candidates that, are out there running hard. And we also need to be not just showing up a couple weeks before they're going to vote. We got to be there all the time, talking to people and working with people. And to me, that's absolutely critical. I just lost another friendship, I think, and Dianne Feinstein, who is the senator in California. She's 87 years old, and she just signed up to run again. And I told her, I told you not to run the first time, and I can't even believe you're thinking about doing it again. But, at some point, I don't know what we do. I think we almost need age limits or something, because there's just some people who cannot quit, and their names are strong enough that they won't win the primary against younger people, unfortunately, and then they lose the general.
Well, not trying to be ageist, but I do agree with you in that way because, we have these career politicians that just stay in there for years upon end. And, when you're 80 or 90 years old, you should probably want to just go and travel and enjoy life for the last few years that you have left, not just kind of sit around. So I agree with you, Congresswoman, with that.
I'm like, go write your memoirs, do something, or mentor other young people or whatever. But there's nobody who's in their late 80s and 90s that can tell me they have the same get up and go. I mean, you just don't. And I can say that being in my 80s. Yeah.
Well, do you think that, sorry to interrupt you, Congresswoman, do you think that term limits will ever get passed? Or do you think that there's so much power and these people want that power and they want that job that they will never do that in Congress or in the Senate in general?
It's interesting that they'll probably never limit themselves, that they're gun-ho to limit other people. They'll tell other people, you can't fly beyond this age, you can't drive, you can't drink before this age, you can't,
Right.
They've got all these limits for everybody else. I'm not really for term limits so much as I do think an age limit is something that we could do. The term limits, the reason I was never for term limits is I used to come from a small state like Colorado. And if you take the big states like California, Florida, Texas, they can rule everything because they have so many people. And if somebody in Colorado young gets elected and stays there long enough, they can kind of get some power back, from being there. So you kind of need that in a way to overbalance the huge numbers that the big states can turn up in Congress. But there's a point where they're just, it doesn't work. I always believe people should get elected in their 30s and 40s, not their 80s.
I agree. I mean, we look at ChuckGrassley, who is the pro tem of the Senate. Well, right now, until the Democrats get in power in the Senate in a couple of weeks, he's 89. He's going to be, I think he's 86 or 89 years old. I mean, come on. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a little too much. Robert Byrd stayed in the Senate until he died. I mean,
how about Strom Thurmond? Remember Strom Thurmond?
Yeah. I mean, come on. I mean, it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans too that do this, both sides. So we got to get a hold on that. As you said, I do want to get into this. Now, we know that we talked about the governor's race coming up. We do have a person in our area, and I'm sure you may know who this person is, you may not, but I think you do because you're very into politics in the area. In Orange County, Anna Escamani, who's helped a lot of people around the state. Say again, sorry.
She's fantastic.
Yeah, and she is actually, I've interviewed her 4 times on the program. She's thinking about running for governor. We do have another woman that's doing a great job with Nikki Fried, also from Boca Raton, that may run. Obviously, Gwen Graham's still in the mix, and we do have some other people that may run. What do you think of these people? We just talked about the younger generation. I'm partial to Anna because she's around my age, and I think that she's also kicking butt in the unemployment, and also she kicks ass basically in plain English when she goes after Ron DeSantis time after time after time. She's on the news doing that. So What do you think about I'm not asking you to endorse Congresswoman. I'm just saying, in your mind, what do you think about the 2020 race? I mean, 2022 race with these women that, could win the governorship in the state?
Oh, I think it would be wonderful. I mean, I would be 100% for Anna. I mean, she is, I've been an Anna fan forever. No matter what she does it very well. And she leaves no one behind. I mean, she really works to understand where everybody's coming from, and somehow she works it all out. And she would be the best thing ever happening. I just am a total Anna fan. The other two are okay, but and anything is better than DeSantis. So I will take whatever comes up. I think the interesting thing is the big rumor that Rubio may have a primary with Ivanka Trump. Wouldn't that be the most fun?
Well, I think that would be great, Congresswoman, because if Ivanka Trump did beat Marco Rubio, I think there's room, if the Democrats put up a good candidate, to win that Senate seat back. Where I think Marco Rubio, we don't like Marco, both of us, but he is a tough person to beat for the Democrats.
I think that's probably true. I think Ivanka Trump would really motivate a lot of people to get out. I mean, when Trump just did his speech here leaving, and he talked about how hard the children had worked and how hard I was almost in tears, Yeah, right. They worked hard. And they were all there for the free airplane ride, and they were all, it was really sad.
Well, let's talk about what happened January 6th. You were a congresswoman for quite a few years. You were on powerful committees. You know your way around the People's House in the U.S. Capitol. Can you talk about what happened and what your opinion was on the insurrection?
Well, I think there's absolutely no question that these people have been dying to do something like this for a very long time. And the president lit the match. I mean, they had been building this big tank of gasoline, and he lit the match. Having worked in the White House or in the Congress, that Capitol is a real maze. I mean, it's hard to find anything. And it was really scary to see how much they knew when they came in. We now know, at least several Congress people have said they saw this new Congresswoman from Colorado taking them around, showing them the way before, the day before. I think all of those people should be thrown out of Congress. Now, I'm really sorry, but anybody who was out there egging them on and helping them, that was just absolutely wrong. I don't even know how you can work with those people. So the whole thing is just awful. They were there. They were all excited. The president told them to go up. He may even come with them, yada, yada, fight. I mean, you'd have to be totally stupid. If you and I did that, we would be in prison right now. Right. And so it's just time to do it. I do think one of the funniest things, I don't know if you saw this, but the FBI has been learning about a lot of these guys because some women figured out that they would probably go brag about it on dating sites. And of course they did. And that's how they find them. Can you believe that they're that stupid? But
well, not even just that. That's stupid. I didn't hear that, but that is pretty stupid.
I mean, there's so many. I am so worried about how we ever talk to these people. I mean, they have their own facts. They don't want to hear it. It's very troubling. And as I say, it's been building for a long time. I mean, we've had small militia groups and stuff like this in Colorado for a long time and lots of places, but several different things. Number one, that they raise so much money on a Christian website to get them to be able to travel. So you had people traveling from everywhere. Number two, I honestly think they thought they could do all of this and there was nothing, they'd never have to pay for it because the president's been getting away with all sorts of stuff and he told them to do it. So it's like he could wave a wand and they would be fine. I think the people who were the most astute, and we owe them everything, were the staffers who were smart enough to walk out of there with the ballots. If those guys had gotten a hold of those ballots, heaven only knows. But some staffers had the wherewithal in all that excitement to pick them up and get the hell out of there. And thank goodness they did.
But, why are we putting all this money in the defense budget if we can't even, and what does that say to our adversaries? The North Koreans, Iranians, Russians, terrorists in general from other parts of the world, that we have this bloated defense budget and we can't even keep our congressmen and women safe during a regular day in the Congress.
Nor can we keep the Capitol safe. I mean, I mean, first of all, you have to know that the Capitol Police, obviously, many of those appointments are political. And I honestly think there was some political stuff going on there. Secondly, I think all of us know if the rioters had been Black, they would all be shot. Right. It was almost like they were welcoming their drinking buddies in, come on in. I mean, some weren't, to be honest. Some were really trying and lost their lives. And so we can't talk with a broad brush. But the stupidity of the two sergeants of arms for having looked at what the FBI told them was coming and saying, we don't need any more help. Of course they had to be fired. I mean, I don't know. I guess they just didn't believe it. I hope they now believe it.
So if you were in Congress now, is there a way as a congresswoman, if you were in Congress right now, to make sure those people get charged? Because there were two Capitol policemen that died fighting against this mob of insurrectionists, basically terrorists in general.
Oh, there will be all sorts of hearings and investigations, and there are going to be a lot of people that will be gone, I think, when this is all over. Starting with, they're already gone, the head of the police and the two sergeant at arms. So, it was really pathetic, just pathetic.
Right. I have a couple more questions as we end the interview. And this is Congresswoman Pat Schroeder. She was a former congresswoman from Colorado's 1st District, 1973 to 1997. Congresswoman, as we end with the last few questions, someone asked me to ask you this, that they are a Trump supporter. They are a Republican in general. And I'm going to read you directly what they told me to read. So they wrote, they said, people are hurting right now. There's people that don't have jobs. There's people that are sick with COVID, have no health care, are homeless, or about to be homeless. They don't see the government doing anything on both sides. This person also said that a lot of his friends that are Republicans and Trump supporters have been baited by social media and politicians, and it's not their fault when they go out there and do these crazy evil things, because they've been baited and they're down on their luck. So they start to believe these things. So the person wrote, there's a lot of hurt in this country and we have to push to make big fundamental changes, or this is what we get with people turning to QAnon and Trump in general. What would you say to that person?
First of all, I'd be very worried that that person hasn't followed the news. I mean, no, in all honesty, as you know, the Democrats in the House passed legislation to deal with so many of those issues way back in March, and the Senate never took them up.
True.
When they finally got so embarrassed by the two senators who were running in Georgia saying, we're going to lose if you don't do something, they brought up one bill for $600 and nothing for the states and nothing for all sorts of other things, because they, but nevertheless, what I worry about is people like that are only getting one side, and the Republicans are telling them, hey, we're sitting on all this because we don't spend that kind of money. We give the money away to the rich people. They don't say that. We just do tax cuts, And so everybody gets blamed. If you remember, there were over 250 bills sitting on
Mitch
McConnell's
McConnell.
desk that he never took up, dealing with so many of these issues that people complain about. And the tragedy is, even the mainstream media didn't talk about that very much, because Trump was always stealing all the airways, ranting and raving about something or doing something stupid. And so everybody, rather than doing the harder work of covering what the Congress was doing and what the Senate was doing, they're covering what this crazy guy is doing. You know, what has he done today? Whose name is he called? How did he tweet? Da 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 da. And so my real question is back to you, that friend, is how do we get the news to you? I mean, where do we find a news source you're going to trust to find out what's really going on? You know, when I was in Congress, one of the things we used to argue on facts. You know, there was the Vietnam War, and I may be against it and you may be for it, but the next day we may be on something else, and then we may be together. So we did facts. And when Newt Gingrich came, it all stopped, and he said, no, we're going to name call. So if I came out and I was against the war, I would be a communist. That's it. I mean, that's their answer. They don't try to defend the war. They just say you're a communist. And that's what's happened since.
Well, they don't even know what these words mean. They call everybody a socialist, communist, Marxist, and these people don't even know the definition of that. And this goes on constantly. That's what I said. I said they could run Joe Biden. They're going to call him a socialist, Marxist, communist. They run Bernie Sanders. They'll call him the same words. Barack Obama, the same thing. So it doesn't matter. And then you ask these people, because I know these people, I'm sure you know a lot of these people that are QAnon Trump supporters in general. They don't know what those words mean. They just regurgitate the same stuff that they say on Fox, OAN, or Newsmax is the new one. We have a country where mass is a big issue as far as believability if they work. The coronavirus is still a believability issue for a lot of these people too. So a country that's far apart, and of course we saw what happened with the insurrectionists. Congresswoman, how do we bring the country together? Do you believe Joe Biden can do it? Or is it totally broken that it's going to be hard, you know, whether it was Joe Biden or Joe Schmo to bring the country together?
No, it's going to be very hard, mainly because, you know, we used to have 3 or 4 news services, ABC, NBC, CBS, you know, PBS. Now you've got all these people, and so many of them really is not news, it's calling people names. And I you know, how we get over that, I'm not sure. Joe Biden will try. I mean, let's face it, he's going to give it his best. I think he did a lovely thing last night in that remembrance service, and I'm sure he'll be very articulate today. But they're like this. They don't want to hear it. You know, they're just going to say, oh, how sad that Trump went, and people didn't appreciate him, and this thing was stolen, and, you know, whatever. I couldn't believe that neither Trump or his wife could wish them well by saying their names even. I mean, I just wanted to scream, say their names, say their names. Jill Biden, you know, Joe Biden, guess what? Yeah, I mean, it's just, so when we're at that level, it's going to take an awful lot. And there's a lot of money apparently in doing these right-wing shows. So
we see that obviously Trump left today on his helicopter, and he's flying on Air Force One for the last time to Mar-a-Lago. What do you see as next for Trump? Do you see that he's going to still be a huge factor in Republican politics? I believe he is, especially with the base. Or do you see him as running a media network, running in 2024, maybe jail? I highly doubt that. But anyway, go ahead, Congresswoman.
Well, I think he's going to have a lot of process servers knocking on his door down there, because there's so many cases being filed against him.
Yeah.
and he's got to figure out how to deal with that because he's not going to be able to protect himself in the White House from all of that. And
Were you
he's
surprised he didn't pardon himself, though, or anybody in his family, Congresswoman?
well, as a lawyer, there's real questions about whether you can do that. So I think people talked him out of that because you had to kind of, it probably wasn't going to hold up anyway. And you can't pardon yourself against an impeachment. So he's got a lot of problems. I mean, the banks aren't going to fund him. He's also older. Let's face it. He's not a spring chicken either. And you could see that. And when he lost, he just stopped working.
Yeah.
He hasn't done anything but play golf since he lost. Even though the country's in terrible shape, with the COVID and everything else. So he can talk a lot about that, what he's going to do, but it's like a cult. I think there will be people who will follow him anywhere, whatever. But if he ends up spending a lot of time in court, losing a lot of elections or losing a lot of cases, and having to pay an awful lot of fines and so forth, and losing a lot of his business. Look at his business. His business is going to be pathetic too. So
yeah,
I think he's all, we say out west, all hat and no cattle. I don't know what we say in Florida, but at this point, he's all hat and no cattle. I mean, he's got real problems.
So can you end with this, Congresswoman? We saw that the Biden administration has been put together, a lot of good picks, a lot of picks that I'm a little questionable on, but I think he has had a lot of good picks in the cabinet. And also, your opinion on that. And also, can you talk about with the slim majorities in the House and the Senate? And, Joe Biden does have the White House, but the Democrats do have those slim majorities in the House and the Senate. What do you think can get done as we end the interview?
Well, obviously, there's going to be a lot of negotiation on everything. I mean, anybody who thinks there's just going to be this giant radical left movement, forget about it, because it's so tight, so very tight. And Kamala Harris will have to come break any tie vote. And she probably wants to do some other things too. So, I mean, he's going to have to work awfully hard, calling and stroking their egos and doing all of these things. I mean, it is not going to be fun, but Joe Biden is very good at that. And he knows how to do that. It's kind of like people keep forgetting how much Lyndon Johnson got done. Yeah. And he got done so much, mainly because the Civil Rights Act, all these things, he called, he worked, and this is going to be that kind of thing. I don't think you're going to see a lot on TV. I think you're going to see much more of them in working the halls.
All right. I hope you're right, because we do need that stimulus package to pass, especially now with all these cases going sky high. So if we don't get anything done, it's going to be a big problem. And I do not want to see the Republicans taking over the House and the Senate in 2022. Yeah. That would be a disaster. Anyway, so as we end, Congresswoman, I appreciate your time. And thank you so much. You are an American treasure. And thanks for coming on all the time. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. You too, Congresswoman. Stay safe.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye now.